All right, everybody. I am so excited today to have Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy on the show with us. As I had said earlier, she is a fellow podcast host and the founder of The Business of Happiness. It is such a joy to have you on. And this has been an episode I've been looking forward to doing because I have been on a happiness journey. And I think there are just different times in our lives where we can be really successful or doing really well. And yet there's still a part of us that just, there's a void sometimes that's just there. And I think we can get out of sync. So I'm super excited to have you on the show and to have you sharing some knowledge with our listeners on the Hey Docs show here. So if you wouldn't mind, one of the ways I love to start out the show is in the event that somebody doesn't know who you are or doesn't know about your podcast or what you're doing, would you mind just giving us a little bit of history from the orthodontic side to the business side and go from there?
Wonderful. Thank you, by the way. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week myself. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm an orthodontist, and that was my story from the beginning. I was that 19-year-old who had that so much excitement for finding a profession that married science and artistry and this promise of entrepreneurship and leadership and giving back to the community and actually having positive impact on people's lives. And I thought, gosh, that's so exciting. And I remember just putting my nose to the grindstone in dental school to get through to finally, when I'm a dentist, I'll be happy. And then so let me just sacrifice all my happiness and all my self care and all my physical needs and my relationships just to be the dentist. And when I finally became a dentist, it was very unfulfilling. And I thought, okay, I'm not happy yet. So what is it? And then that's when ortho spoke to me. And I'll never forget the first time I walked into an orthodontic office as a student, a dental student. It's the happiest place. This particular place was giving out mugs for completing their orthodontic journey with balloons attached to it. And they were singing and everyone was high-fiving each other. I thought, if I'm going to be a dentist, I want to be in the happiest place on earth.
Right.
I want to be where the patients are not in pain. They're happy coming. I want to surround myself with joy and happiness every day in the office. I thought that's the specialty I need to be in. And then, Jill, as we do, like I just put my nose to the grindstone and became the best orthodontic resident I possibly could and missed some family weddings, missed some family funerals, missed some important moments in my own life, and was practicing as an orthodontist finally as an associate and was so unhappy and just feeling that there was this void. And so we always ask ourselves, well, what's missing? I thought, oh, I need a family. Let me start having children. And what had happened is because I'd neglected my body for so long during residency and dental school, we really struggled with infertility for a while. And during that time, I thought, okay, maybe that's not for me. I need to own the practice. Let me buy an orthodontic practice. And so in very quick succession, I purchased a practice. I got pregnant. I had a baby. Then I very quickly, my body figured it out. We had another baby. And suddenly I had everything that I thought success and happiness should be. And I was so scared and unhappy and so miserable. And it was that time, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because it was that time when I really felt a lot of shame and guilt because, and I see this in so many of our colleagues as well, is that here I can do all this. I can grow a practice. I can graduate from dental school. I can be accepted into one of the most challenging residency programs in our profession. Why can't I feel happy? What's wrong with me? I've suddenly created this beautiful house and the fancy kids and the fancy car and the fancy dogs. What is wrong with me that I can't find happiness? And for me, that journey looked like fleeing. I was so scared and had so much self-judgment and self-doubt that the only thing I knew to do was to run. So I literally sold my practice, literally left the state
Wow.
I went to a divorce attorney. I went to a bankruptcy attorney. If I could have run from my kids, I would have.
Wow.
And looking back now, I can see that I was just in such a space of fight or flight, literally fleeing.
Right?
And that was the only way I knew how. And that started my journey of self discovery because the one thing I couldn't run away from was myself.
Very insightful, for sure.
Yeah. And it was a lot of unlearning
Mhm.
and recognizing that I had created for myself an expectation of success that was someone else's algorithm of success. I kept looking to other people to tell me how many patients a day should I have? How much money should I make? Who should I have for my accountant? Trying to understand what is it that will finally feel like success and fulfillment and happiness. How many cars do I need? Well, maybe I need the vacation home. And always living outside of really reflecting and taking the time to understand what happiness meant to me.
Mhm.
And I fast forward this story because this started my journey of self discovery that took decades. And now, as a orthodontist who's been a practicing orthodontist for 21 years, I can't even believe I'm saying that. I am now in a place where I started my own practice from scratch. I love what I do. Every day is a joy. I love being a business owner. I thought I never would be again. I'm still married to the same incredible man, still have the same beautiful children. But even the orthodontics I do is the
Mhm.
same. I still accept payments the same way in my practice. But everything changed when I started paying attention to me and recognizing the power I have to choose happiness.
Mm.
And then that's
Wow.
where my journey started with the business of happiness, because what I recognized was how many of our colleagues are literally putting smiles on children's faces every day, the best profession on earth,
Mhm.
and bereft of happiness themselves. And I started this podcast thinking there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way for us to understand how to find happiness and success, how to live up to that dream of that 19-year-old who just wanted to be a practicing orthodontist living in this beautiful space, all this expertise that we've cultivated for decades, the money we put into it, the time, the sacrifice. It seemed such a sin to me to just throw it all away
Sure.
to become a yoga instructor, right? And so, how do we balance this? How do we find this beautiful marriage of maintaining truth for ourselves and not losing ourselves in the journey?
Mm.
And that's where the business of happiness started.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And there's just so many people I think that do find themselves in and on the path that you were on. I can tell you, having been in the ortho industry for a long time now, very similar to you, I've talked to many doctors at different points in their career, and it could be somebody who's just like you, starting out when they just got their practice going and their life is just really taking off, and they're just unhappy and miserable, or they could be midlife and miserable. And I think the thing with happiness, and again, I'm on my own journey to find out really what that means, is I think you alluded to it so well, but living our life in somebody else's lens, living our life thinking that we have to meet somebody else's expectation when that expectation may not really even be there at all, but it's what we put on ourselves. It's that really heavy that really heavy coat that we choose to to the backpack or whatnot that we put on and just trudge around. And especially when we look at the social lens, it's so easy to compare ourselves to others and then be like, they're happy. Yeah, they're happy through a lens too. So
Yes, and I think it gets even more complicated in a service industry where we want our patients to be happy. So we put a lot of our own self-worth in our patients' hands, in the
right.
parents of our patients' hands, and forgetting that they're human beings who have their own stories, who have their own backgrounds, who have their own emotional wounds and traumas and fears and woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And that so often it has nothing to do with us. but we literally put our self-worth in their hands on a daily basis. And I think as business owners, or even if you're not a business owner, you're an associate in an orthodontic practice, we always want to receive our patients' approval and validation. We are constantly seeking that. Or our team members, if you're the leader of a team, we're constantly wanting to be the best boss. I want you to love me. I want you to feel like I'm somebody who's worth working for. But we can easily lose ourselves in that journey if we're not paying close attention. Even as you mentioned, social networks or even family. Even as a mom, my gosh, all the moms out there, I have teenagers right now, and my heart goes out to you because we want to just do the best for the people around us. But in that is such critical importance to do what's best for us. And I think that is such an important secret to happiness, is being able to give yourself the value and the worthiness to take time and space for yourself, and the rest will follow.
Yes.
I'll tell you, looking at my two business models, if we step into the business world for a moment, I own two practices. The one where I was doing everything for everyone else was surviving, bought me a house, bought me a car, but we were doing beautiful things, but it didn't feel fulfilling and it wasn't taking off. It constantly felt like a drudgery, like I was missing the secret to how to make it successful. I'm the same person doing the same orthodontics, but the different perspective of what will fill me up? What feels amazing to do? How will I go into the practice today with joy and putting my happiness first? I know that's an unpopular opinion, but putting my happiness first. When do I want to work? What hours do I want to work? What vacations do I want to take? Let me tell you the incredible success that my business is. It became the #1 orthodontic practice in the state, and I work 3 days a week because I'm literally loving every minute. And the moment I don't, I ask myself, stop a moment. What's going on here? Where am I missing the joy and the fun of it? Because that really is the secret.
Right. Oh, that's so good. And I'm glad you unpacked that for us, because I'm just going to echo what you said. I completely agree with you that it's so easy to get lost in doing for others and forget. And I think especially as women, I think it's so easy for us to forget to put ourselves first and to forget. And again, not that many of my male listeners out there, not that you don't do this either, but I just think there's an extra level that comes with women where we just really internalize and take on. And for the most part, it's our job to take care of everybody else, and us comes last. And from our health to choosing to exercise to choosing to do something that actually makes us happy, whatever that is. And again, I'll tell you, I've been on a journey where, as a business owner, where I had to say, no, I'm not feeling good anymore. And it's hard to sit under the weight of really thinking, I'm doing really good in all these areas, but how am I really doing?
Absolutely.
And saying, gosh, I sit in front of a screen and I love my clients, but I could be on talking to doctors for 12 hours a day and then go, but what makes me really happy is being out in the sunshine. And I can't even think of the last time I went on a walk, or I can't think of the last time I chose to, I don't know, do whatever for myself. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And again, it's an area that is so easy for us to just put ourselves out there and think that we aren't worthy. I think sometimes it's that we're not worthy of putting us first because we've been told to work hard and drive and do. And eventually when you get down the road, you'll have time to retake care of yourself. And usually that's the time where you're so broken that it's going to take some work. And that kind of leads me into, and you've been just throwing us great advice as we have started already, but what are some pieces of advice that you would give orthodontists that may come to you or that may be listening and are saying, hey, this is really touching some buttons for me. This is hitting an area that I think sometimes we don't even want to think about, because to go there it brings up a lot. So what would you tell people there?
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that, Jill, because I think even what you were sharing, so many of us can see our own reflection, and there's so much that we have deeper belief systems around our worth and receiving
Mhm.
praise that I think as orthodontists, there happen to be quite a few themes that, and I'm sure you see this as well with your clients, is that many of us were most, let me see how I can put it. So many of us come from communities that maybe didn't have as much financially. Many of us happen to be first or second generation immigrants. Many of us also tend to be the most successful of our siblings or maybe even of our whole families.
Mm.
And where that theme follows through is we found a lot of our value, our love in our family system from our accomplishments.
Mm.
You got the highest grades, that's when you were recognized.
Mm.
Maybe you had a sibling who was seen for other reasons. Maybe someone was ill or somebody who had needed more of your family's attention. But when you got the best grades, you got into dental school, you got into the orthodontic residency, you really received that love and connection. And so, for just a moment, let me just honor every single person listening to this because love and connection is one of the deepest human needs that we all share. And also give yourself a little grace. That's how it worked.
Yes.
You are amazing for it. That's how you survived as a child. That's how you survived as a teen or a young person. It was a brilliant use of your incredible talent and it worked.
Mm.
But maybe now it's no longer serving you. So many of those coping skills were actually miraculous inventions of our own. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or that you're broken or weird or twisted or hungry for attention. It just means that's how you received that love and connection. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit or opportunity to recognize our own evolution. We allow ourselves to evolve in our understanding of math. What I knew when I was 5, I allowed that to progress. Now I know a lot more and I can learn more. But we don't give ourselves that opportunity when it comes to our emotional intelligence and our personal development, that it's okay that 10 years ago, that was the way you found safety or stability. Another one that is common is maybe you came from a home where there was financial insecurity, and this was your way of gaining safety. Maybe it wasn't safe in your home when you were younger because of the financial insecurity, but your intelligence and your tenacity and your discipline to work got you into a profession where you now can earn enough to create safety for yourself. And bravo.
Yeah.
But maybe now that overworking, overachieving, you're beginning to recognize that in this season of your life is actually causing you harm. And it doesn't mean that for a time in your life, it wasn't a miracle and a lifesaver and a literal lifeline for you. But maybe now you can have new insight. So I think that awareness is the biggest thing. That whisper you were talking about of, man, I haven't taken a walk. Let that be a beautiful flashlight indicator light on your dashboard that's saying, pay attention and try to let go of the self-judgment.
Right.
Because it's the self-judgment that is our sabotage. The self-judgment that comes in and says, oh, see, you screwed that up too. Now you should feel bad. You haven't gone for a walk in 10 years. You haven't taken a vacation. Now you should feel bad about that. And then we just start stacking the shame and guilt.
Yep.
And the one thing about shame and guilt is it's a terrible motivator. It does not work. The stick does not work. We cannot punish ourselves enough to be better.
Oh.
And so the first thing I would always say is enormous compassion and gratitude for yourself, not for anything outside of you, but thank you for giving me those skills, that hard work, that tenacity, that drive. Remember, I mentioned in my story, I put my nose to the grindstone. I look back at that beautiful young girl and I think, gosh, I'm proud of you. You did it, babe. And now you can take a deep breath. Now your body's beginning to tell you a new story. And maybe there's a new level of success that you never even thought of that doesn't require burning yourself to the ground.
Right.
Maybe this new level of success involves learning compassion and love and grace and acceptance that there is no perfect and that you're allowed to not be perfect today.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the new level of success that we're looking for.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So good. And you're just really bringing that point home. And I think it can be so easy for us as business owners, for doctors who've been doing this for a while. And I'm going to expand on a point that you said, because again, I see this a lot where you may be that person that's excelling in your family or in your groups. I think what's really tough is it gets really lonely at the top. And who do you like? Everybody's expecting you to have it all held together, right? They're expecting you to, what's the next thing? What's the next level of success that they're going to get to? Your team looks at you that way. Your spouse may look at you that way, the family members. And wow, it can really become a point of, I think when we think about when orthodontists start to feel that burnt out or dissatisfied with their work, I think a lot of times they hit that ceiling. And because who do I ask? Who do I talk to? Where do I go? What do I do for myself? Oh, I just need to go back to the habits that I've had. Put your nose down, grind.
Yeah.
Instead of pivoting. And I love, and I know that's been like the key word and maybe overused a little bit, but I have always loved that idea of being able to say, I can make a change. I can change the direction of where I'm going to go. So thanks for unpacking that. That was really.
That's beautiful, what you just said, because I think there's so much empowerment in recognizing that. I think often we feel like we are victims of our environment. And the moment we can change that wording to recognize that we actually get to choose our own reality.
Powerful word. Such a powerful word.
Such a powerful word, right? And puts us back in the seat of, oh, wait a minute, I actually am in control. I think often we feel like we're a victim of our financial situation. If you've graduated with $1 million of student loan debt, and you feel like that's really limiting your options, or we're a victim of insurance companies or other stories one might tell you just can't find good help anymore, or DSOs are doing this X, Y, and Z. Like we often will put that power in external circumstances and we forget the phenomenal power that we have within ourselves. And you asked a great question of who do I go to? And I'm a firm believer that we have the answers within ourselves. That just like we can't look for external validation of our worth in material things. So we know that, right? We know that there's no number of cars that I can buy to bring me happiness. There's no number of houses or a dollar number in the bank account. And I've done that too. I thought if I could just get to this number. And then we all have that experience of getting to that number and realizing, oh, that's woefully too little. And then we kick that number to a new number. And we realize, oh, there's not actually an external validation for me of my worth or an indicator of me finally receiving happiness or being given the permission to receive happiness. So then we realize, oh, wait a minute, it has to all be from within. And I love coaches as a reflection of guiding us to find that answer. But even coaches don't know the answer for you. And that's the beautiful thing about coaches is coaches are only there to help you ask the right questions. But each of us has the answer within us. And one way to find that answer is to get very still. And that's a challenge. Because when we've been for decades moving fast, doing and going from this do more mentality, it's very difficult to just sit in quiet. And really, that's where the answers lie, is when we can just get super quiet with ourselves and start asking ourselves those questions.
Oh, so good. And as you said, I think that getting quiet, or I'll say sometimes for me personally, just getting real with myself. And the thing that I also have to give myself permission about, and I think a lot of people do too, is I'm not going to figure this out overnight. And it's okay to go on a journey with yourself.
Absolutely.
And to figure out where you're going and what changes you need to make. And again, going back to, I don't have to figure it all out at once. And I don't have to stake my claim in the sand in this area and say, okay, now this is the new direction and I'm going to do everything I can to get there. It's really a beautiful journey that I think you're describing. And I think it's so rich that we're having this conversation about that. So yes. I want to talk a little bit about something that I think is so elusive. And I don't even really believe in true work-life balance. I don't think we will ever have a season that we're truly in balance. But I'm wondering if we can talk about what your view on what that means, because I think we're all going to have maybe a different view on that. But when you think about happiness and putting yourself first in your personal life and your business, can you unpack that a little bit for us and how you see that working out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is also, to your point, a journey of discovery. I think my definition changes constantly as well as I'm trying to understand this in my life. And where I am right now is an idea of just looking at, instead of teasing the two apart, creating life. So instead of looking at work, for a while I thought work-life blending, and I thought, what if it's just my life? Because our work is a part of our lives. And then we start to realize, oh, all these components matter. I think we sometimes consider ourselves very singularly. We put a label on ourselves as doctor, dentist, orthodontist, business owner. And then we have other labels, mom or sister or daughter or wife. But that label tends to define us. And what if we allowed ourselves to be a little bit more multifaceted? So instead of seeing yourself as a label, almost squeezed into a box of this is what an orthodontist has to look like, what if we imagined ourselves more, let's take an image of a diamond. So a diamond has many facets. Beautiful facets. Now imagine each one of those facets becomes an aspect or a component of who we are, as opposed to this label of being crammed in a box, and the box feels limiting. And then I have to try and squeeze in my family. And then I have to try and squeeze in self-care. Even self-care can feel overwhelming. Like I have to make time for that too, right? It's even that concept feels overwhelming. So what if we took away our impression of ourselves as being forced into that box of work and then trying to jam in life as well, and looked at ourselves more like a diamond and those beautiful facets, and realized they actually work in concert with one another and they reflect one another. So we can't have a beautiful work practice without a beautiful self-care, listening to our bodies. Now, this is very poetic and ethereal, and I agree with you, it feels elusive, but sometimes that helps because it gives ourselves permission to be multifaceted, to explore painting, to explore walking in the woods, to explore going to the gym, to explore sitting with a 4-year-old or chatting with my grandfather. That being multifaceted becomes very important. And you can imagine a diamond that has one facet that's very large and flat doesn't shine as brilliantly. It feels more one-dimensional. It doesn't feel as beautiful and sparkly and celebrated. So we want all parts of those diamond. And it's not just work and life. It's actually so much more intricate. And does it require discipline? Yes. And the discipline has to also be around taking care of ourselves and establishing boundaries and maintaining boundaries. And I think that diamond looks different at different times in our lives. We all, for moms out there, when you've just had a baby, you're all in on that baby. Like, you're not going to work for a few weeks, please. And I say that because I went to work before my due date with both of my oldest children. They were born so prematurely because I was washing my body with cortisol that I was back to work before their due date. That same do more mentality, I just didn't know better.
Yeah.
So recognizing that when you have a baby, now you're going to be all in that there's no room for balance or blending. You're taking care of that child for those weeks. Maybe even when you're birthing a business baby, you're all in it. And maybe you're there on Saturdays and Sundays, and let that be okay. But then also remember that beautiful part of you has to come back to that diamond again. We have to come back to all parts of ourselves. And that's where the discipline comes in, and the kind of shining and polishing of that diamond is the listening to your body. That's where being still is so important of, okay, I've poured into this business now and I'm tired. Now I need to listen to my body and start creating new expectations for my day and start cutting back and start listening to what I need. And I think it's fun. It's fun to have passion. It's fun to dive into something completely and pour ourselves into it. So I never want to lose that excitement. I'm a business creator myself. I have 4 businesses and I love creating business. So I never want someone to tell me that's too much. But the only way I can keep growing is by also paying attention to all parts of myself. And when we give ourselves permission to do that, it's amazing how much all the other parts of us will shine. So that reflection really works. And I know we all have experiences of that. When you do go on vacation and you finally give yourself a chance to get away, and maybe it took you a couple days to just calm your nervous system down because your body's been in this sympathetic nervous system storm, which is the profession we're in. And finally you got to that place, and then suddenly you had moments of inspiration and moments of creativity. And you realize, oh, wow, when we give ourselves that time and space, imagine that beautiful diamond again, it reflects on the other parts. Or I show up to my team feeling more calm. And now I don't need to have meetings every day or whatever it looks like. I can have one meeting and be fully present because I took care of myself that morning, and I took radical personal responsibility for my own mental health and wellness.
Oh, so good. And as you have been talking about this, I've been thinking, okay, I think sometimes we just go through different seasons, right?
Yes.
And as you were saying that, and I love you talking about, you may be in a season of, I'm building a business, I'm doing this, but if we don't realign and come back to us, I think that's where we get down this road of burnout. And that's where we get down the road that is just so unhealthy for us. So I'm curious, when you're working with clients on the other side of your business, do you have goals or systems that you encourage them to work on or work through to help bring them back to, I'm going to say center. Again, I know we're never in center, but help them make sure that they don't start shaving that diamond to just one side and we stop shining everywhere else?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we need to recognize, and I alluded to it a minute ago in terms of the nature of what we do, recognizing that orthodontics is amazing and it's fast paced. We're seeing anywhere from, depending on the size of your practice, 25 to 100 patients a day. When I say those words to other medical practitioners, they actually don't believe me. People don't believe we can see 100 patients in a day. And recognizing that probably a good 75% of your patients come with some level of dental trauma, have their own fears and anxiety. If not dental trauma, their parents are coming with financial trauma. Your team members are coming with their own backgrounds and fears and wounds and challenges. Any one day, we are practicing in a place of fight or flight. And if you, there's not one person who is outside of this. So give yourself grace because we are all doing this. And paying attention to your body is something we never learned how to do. They call us neck uppers. We're very clever, we're very smart, we're very intelligent, but we forget about the rest of our bodies. Many of us can identify with getting to the end of the day and you're like, you need to pee so bad, you're not sure you're going to make it to the bathroom, but you didn't notice all day long that you never went.
Or you never ate.
Or you get to the pantry when you get home and you eat half the pantry as you're making dinner because you haven't eaten all day. We have trained ourselves to ignore our bodies, to ignore those cues that our bodies, and I'm including our nervous system, sends us all day. So we are living in a perpetual state of fight or flight. And we know from research the terrible outcome that can have on our health, on our physical health. It's what leads to diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure. But we also know the terrible impact it has on our mental health and well-being. When we're in a place of sympathetic nervous system storm, we also can't access our intelligence. So what's actually happening is we're having something called amygdala hijacking, which is where your fight or flight response happens. And we can't access that brilliance that I was talking about earlier. All the expertise. Maybe you've had this experience of blank brain when you're sitting with a patient and you just don't know what to do. Or you're talking to someone and you think, I just can't face this right now. Those are examples of fight or flight. Or you notice that it's not really like your personality, but you got a little defensive or aggressive with that mom or your team member. Recognize and hold compassion that you are literally in a trauma response, in a fight or flight storm. So the number one thing I think we can do for ourselves as orthodontists is learn how to bring ourselves back into parasympathetic nervous system state on a daily basis, all day long in the practice. So we know that meditation helps. Research shows us that. And so many of your listeners might have a practice of meditation. But if we're meditating in the morning and have a beautiful gratitude practice at night, which is amazing, and I highly recommend both of those things for happiness, but we're spending 15 hours in the middle in fight or flight, we're still having that same anxiety and stress and overwhelm. And so one of the things that is the first step is awareness. Just noticing what your body looks and feels like when you're stressed, when you're in the sympathetic nervous system storm. Are your shoulders up high? Are you shallow breathing? Can you tell your heart is racing?
I was just going to say the heart racing.
You feel like you can't take a breath. And here's the miracle is even in that moment, we're so much more powerful than we realize. Even if you're in that place and a million things are happening, you have 7 patients in the chairs, the suction just broke, your front desk just gave her 2-week notice. Even in that moment, we have the power to slow ourselves down and calm our nervous system. And the best tool that we have for that is our breath. So we can literally use our bodies to ask our body to get back into parasympathetic nervous system. And the way we do that is literally taking a deep breath in, holding it there, holding when you're completely full, and then slowly exhaling. And we can do it with a count. So ideally it's 4 on counting to 4 on the inhale, holding for 7, and then exhaling for 8. So it's a 4-7-8 breath. But if you just imagine you want your exhale to last longer than your inhale, what you're doing is you're asking your body to go into parasympathetic nervous system. So let's just do it for a moment. Would you mind if we do it? Let's do it.
Because let's do it. Yep.
And you can do this if you're driving. You can do this wherever you are listening to this podcast. So literally with me, take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it at the top for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Inhale. If you want to, close your eyes if you can, not while you're driving. Keep that nice big inhale, diaphragmatic breathing, and hold it. And exhale slowly through your mouth. Fully empty all the way. And let's take another nice deep breath in through your nose. Filling, let your diaphragm expand. Hold it, feel that fullness. And now let everything out through your mouth, all the way fully empty. Okay. You can open your eyes. And I wonder if you can just notice how different your body feels.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You've literally asked your body to just, you can hear my voice even. I'm slowing my voice down. We're literally asked our body to go into parasympathetic nervous system. And the amazing thing about that practice is we can do it behind a mask. We can do it in a meeting. You can do it while you're speaking to a patient. If we can just gain the awareness of when we're in that fight or flight space, and I'm touching my shoulders because mine tend to go up, my back gets tight, my jaw gets tight, I start to grind, right? Or maybe it's a thought pattern that you recognize. Oh, when I start beating myself up, or when I start looking for blame in my team, who screwed this up? Or when I start panicking, how did I mess this up? Where did this go wrong? Did we put that in the consent form? When you start recognizing that self-judgment, maybe that's your indicator that you're in stress state. Just incorporate, use your body, use your breath to bring you back to calm. And the thing about calm is now we can access intelligence. Now we can access perspective. Now we can access, compassion. Oh, this mom, she's going through a divorce. She's scared of finances. She's afraid she's not doing enough for her kids. She's afraid she hasn't been giving. She's just in her own. This has nothing to do with me. Or maybe you have taken on too much and you can just have a moment and say, wow, I shouldn't have signed up to speak at that study club. And we're going through new software change in our office. And I just hired a new office manager. I've taken on too much. Let me have some self-compassion and lower my expectations of the amount of things I'm going to accomplish today. Let me just take a step back. But it requires us calming our nervous system down, which is not what we were taught in dental school or in orthodontic residency. We only know how to do. And when you do, you're amping up your fight or flight. So I think the first most important thing is, number one, awareness of what's happening in your body. And the second thing is learning how to increase that, what athletes call vagal tone. Because any Olympic athlete, when they're about to take that jump on the ski jump, they've got to calm their nervous system down. So we're not unlike Olympic athletes, guys. But we need to learn how to recognize that we're in that same space of fight or flight at any moment in the day because of the myriad of hats that we're wearing, because of the incredible work that we're doing. But it's our responsibility to take care of our own nervous system so that we can access all that brilliance that's within us.
Tarryn, you have been phenomenal. I just know that the listeners are just getting so much out of this. Thank you for just really bringing home some points that I think we just really need to hear and need to keep in front of us, giving ourselves permission to not be perfect all of the time.
Yes.
To not be winning all of the time. I love this meme where you'll see somebody and it's almost like a self-hit against them, but I love it because sometimes it's just such a reality of, yep, this is where I'm at. But I'm sure you've seen those memes where somebody will put out there like winning today and they're eating at McDonald's or, you know, whatever, if they've been on a fitness journey or they're whatever. And I look at that a little bit differently because sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission. I'm going to say I've got that whole thing of jelly beans here. There are just where I need to be like, Jill, it's okay to eat the jelly beans. It's all right. And sometimes that's just where my day is and I'm winning. But I don't look at it as a bad thing. Sometimes it's just recognizing that, okay, this is where I'm at. And I can choose, bringing it back to what you said in the very beginning. I can choose to make tomorrow, the end of the day, next month, different. And I don't have to live in this perpetual Jill's eating jelly beans every day state. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can also choose self-compassion.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is we forget that when we were little, when we were 3 and 4-year-olds, the adults in our world were asked, what do you wish for her? Yeah. What do you want for her in her life? And every single one of those adults said, I just want her to be happy. Whatever she does in her life, I just want her to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think we can reparent ourselves. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know if anybody in my life said that, but know that you get to choose that now. And what does that look like for you?
Yeah. That's so good. So as we wrap up here, how can people find out more about the business of happiness? How can they find out more about your podcast? Because I just know that is something that's going to fill another void. I think we all do a lot of podcasts, but let's talk about that. Your business, they want to find out about you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'd love to welcome any of your listeners to the Business of Happiness podcast. You can find me on all the podcast platforms or on YouTube. And I also have a really amazing 12-week transformational program specifically for dentists and doctors called Radical Happiness for Practitioners. And it's intended to be, and it is, a 12-week course of rediscovering the power within ourselves to choose our own happiness. And from a lens of doctor dentist, how do we do so in this world? How do we choose ourselves again? And it's so amazing because our businesses flourish whenever we do, which is sometimes hard to imagine, but it's always 100% of the time true. When you choose yourself, your business will take off.
Yes.
Your relationships will change. And yes, you will find happiness. And if anything, I just want to put out there that happiness is possible, because I think we sometimes think it's this elusive thing that only monks sitting on a mountaintop, but it is possible. It's possible to be an orthodontist and find and feel that fulfillment in yourself. We have an incredible profession. And happiness is possible. So that's what this 12-week Radical Happiness course is intended. And yes, anywhere on Instagram or Facebook, The Business of Happiness or Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, you'll find me there.
Yeah, thank you. Tarryn, thank you so much for just filling a need in our industry and for recognizing within yourself, but then being able to say, you know what, I can help somebody else. I can put smiles back on doctors' faces and I can help them on their road to happiness. So thank you for all the work that you're doing in this space. So as we finish up here on Hey Docs, one of my favorite things to do is something called the speed round. And so I am wondering if you are ready to finish us up with the speed round challenge.
Let's do it.
All righty. So coffee or tea?
Tea. Herbal tea, for sure.
Herbal tea. All righty. Do you have a favorite book?
I do. Oh, there's so many. Right now, I'm going to say The Choice by Edith Eger. Have you read it?
I have not, but I keep a list of books. So I'm going to put that one on my list, The Choice. Great. Do you have a favorite outdoor activity?
Hiking.
Oh, it's right there in my heart.
I know. I love it. Getting out into nature is so important for me. Yes.
I joke with my husband all the time because my love language is being outside and being in nature. And every single time we go on a hike or we're outside, I say to him, I just love this. He's, no, I've never heard that before. I'm like, I know. And I will tell you until I'm no longer in your life that every time we're outside hiking, biking, motorcycling, whatever, I love it.
I can tell, Jill, because of the elephant and the goat in your background. I knew you were a nature lover. I could tell the minute we jumped on the call.
All right. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Spreading happiness, reminding people that they have access to their own happiness for sure. That's my purpose on this earth. I know. I think for a while I thought it was helping people smile, and that's why I was drawn to orthodontics. But I know that it's showing people that they can find and choose happiness for themselves.
So good. So good. And then if there was one piece of advice that you've received over the years that you thought was just really good, what would that have been?
I think it's to breathe. Really. I think anytime I found myself in a place of fear or sadness or overwhelm, breath has always saved me because it's brought me back to me. And even when you were talking about being out in nature, when we're out in nature, it's because whenever you see a vista or you standing at a beach or on a mountaintop, and I think for me, that has always been my greatest resource. I'd say the best advice I ever got was to breathe.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks again for being on Hey Docs. I hope we'll have you on the show in the future here. And just again, thanks for the work that you're doing in this space because we need it. I want docs to know that they can find happiness in anyone who's listening. If you're a business owner, happiness is not this elusive thing that you'll have to have the right personality to be happy.
Yep.
Type of
she was just born happy. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much.